Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Seed Talk. I hope you're all enjoying a beautiful spring day. My name is Layne, and today's episode is actually part 2 of our Mother's Day flowers conversation with Gretel Adams of Sunny Meadows Flower Farm in Zone 6A, Columbus, Ohio. In our previous episode, we covered why the Mother's Day holiday is so important to Gretel's farm, as well as 2 of her top 5 Mother's Day crops, which were anemones and ranunculus. Today we have the remaining 3 flowers in her top 5 list, 2 seed-grown crops and 1 bulb. As a reminder, we recorded this episode in late February when Gretel was 38 weeks pregnant, and I had some fun questions for her at the end of the episode about becoming a mother. This podcast is sponsored by the Gardener's Workshop, so if you're in need of any seeds, tools, supplies, or online courses, feel free to head over to thegardenersworkshop.com and check it out. Okay, let's jump back into our conversation with Gretel. Enjoy. All right, now we're going to be moving on to something you can grow from seed, which is stock. So why is stock such an important Mother's Day crop for your farm?
Well, we can grow it from seed, like you said, so the input cost is less than some of the corms that we grow. But also just because it smells good and it's a nice filler for bouquets. The florists love it. It really likes being a cool weather crop and being grown in the greenhouse during this time. It does require heat for us to hit Mother's Day. If you are in a climate where you're warmer, potentially you might be able to do it unheated. We're like right on the cusp. Like we can plant it out unheated, but then it usually doesn't bloom. The unheated stuff doesn't usually bloom till the end of May for us. So like, you know, if you're a zone or 2 warmer than us, then you might be able to do unheated with the stock. But yeah, and it also smells really nice. So like as beautiful as ranunculus and anemones are, they don't have a scent. And so I think it's just sort of part of the sensory experience with a Mother's Day bouquet.
Oh yeah, definitely. So do you tend to grow the non-branching column type stock like cats, or do you grow branching spray types like quartet, or both?
We don't grow any branching types. We grow all of the like single ones, all of the, cats mostly. Later in the season, we do also grow iron because it is a little bit more heat tolerant. So, but cats has the best like color selection. There is a Japan double, but they only have white in that series. So cats is only about 55% doubles. We do not select out the singles. We just use the singles in bouquets. But the Japan white, those are like, I think they're like 90% doubles or something like that. So I wish there were more that were mostly doubles, but cats has a good color selection. So
can you just talk about that for a minute too, how varieties have a certain percentage within them that are going to be double flower and single?
Yeah, so there is a way to select when you have seeded the flat to try to select for just having the plants that are doubles, but we choose to just keep them and use them in bouquets. So I don't think you can really see any that are singles in the forefront of this photo. But basically, instead of being a big fluffy bloom, it just has one layer of petals. Some people, if you sell to restaurants, or some people will sell those stock as also edible, so those single ones are good to sell as like edible flowers if you ever. We don't personally do that, but I know that like the Chef's Garden sells the stock blooms as an edible flower. But yeah, so you're only going to get a percentage of them to be the double full fluffy flowers. So but instead of having them be a loss, the ones that are singles, we cut them and use them in our mixed bouquets, or cut them and sell them to florists, but for less money. So because they still smell nice and they're beautiful color, but they don't give you that full fluffy cloud feel. So
yeah, I do still like the look of the singles. So
yeah.
So what colors and varieties do you grow specifically for Mother's Day?
So white and apricot are our biggest sellers, but we also like lavender, cherry blossom.
Yeah.
Cats they've got a blue purple and then like a dark purple. And that one I really like, the dark purple. It's a little bit kind of more like, a little bit more wine colored or whatever.
Yeah.
And ruby. So like we grow an assortment. I think there's 6 or 7 different colors that we grow, and people love all of them for Mother's Day. So I think really any color, but white and apricot are definitely our biggest sellers.
And when do you start planting stock, and what do your successions look like?
So with stock, because we try to focus so much on Mother's Day, it's not something that we have like on a consistent basis through the winter. So like we focus on trying to have beds for Easter and have beds for Mother's Day. So the Mother's Day ones are seeded like week 49, 50, 51. We always will do, if we're trying to hit Mother's Day within that time frame, we'll, count backward your days of maturity or whatever, but then we'll always do a week ahead and a week behind, just so that way, if something's happening with the weather where it's nice and they bloomed a little bit faster, or it's cold and they bloomed a little bit slower, then we're sort of like in that in between of maybe being able to still hit Mother's Day no matter what. And then sometimes you get lucky and all the beds are happening at the same time. And then you have a lot of stock for Mother's Day, but it sort of just depends on the weather as far as like how much we actually will have.
And you kind of already touched on this, but how long is your kind of bloom time frame for stock in general?
Yeah, so stock we don't usually have until like end of March-ish. And then it's another one that is a cool weather crop, but it can tolerate a little bit more heat, especially if you grow the iron. And so we can usually get it into like June, middle of June. I wish it would go later, but it tends to get really short and the stems get really scrawny if you try and push it any later than that.
And do you plant stock in the field at all, or do you only do it in your structures?
We don't. We just do it in the structures, but we also do it again in the fall. So we plant in, maybe September or so to try to have it for Thanksgiving. So this year, the Thanksgiving one was just starting to bloom when it was Thanksgiving. So it ended up being more like Christmas stock instead of Thanksgiving stock, but that worked out anyways too. Just like thinking about your color selection going into that. Like if I don't hit Thanksgiving, what colors are people still going to want for Christmas?
Oh, true. And have you ever had any issues hitting Mother's Day with your stock?
Yeah, that one is a little bit more particular. And because it does like it cool, we have also had times where, it does get short or the stems get skinny even by the time of Mother's Day. So the picture that you're seeing right now of the dog and the blooms, and they're all nice and tall and beautiful and full. It's like sometimes it doesn't always look like that if it's been really hot. So it is definitely something that likes the cool weather.
Yeah. So stock is a one and done. So how tightly do you space your stock?
So we're putting 24 plants per foot.
Wow.
There's a 6-row netting in a bed, and then there's 2 plants per hole. I know sometimes it's confusing for people, but if you were using Hortanova netting, we'd be putting 2 plants per hole.
So 2 plants in every 6-inch by 6-inch square.
Yeah. And we actually seed them that way in the greenhouse too. So that way you're planting just 1 cell per hole, but it has 2 plants in it.
And can you describe the proper harvest stage for stock?
Yeah, so we want it to be at least like ideally 50 to 75% open with the blooms. So it's one of those that, a lot of the flowers that you grow in the summer is like, you want to get it before it's fully open. But this one is like, you want to let it open and like chill out and hang out there. So that way it's at least halfway open. So it's more about the ratio of the open blooms to the unopened blooms. So it also depends on how big that like plant is going to be based on your weather. Like, so there's sometimes where it might have only 4 or 5 blooms on it, and that is half of what's going to bloom. And then there's other times where it's going to have 8 blooms on it, and that's what looks like it's going to be half. So really checking down in there for like sort of the number of buds that it looks like it's going to have. So when we're training harvest people, we're talking a lot about like sort of the the percentage of how much has bloomed, or like the ratio of like bloomed to unbloomed, just to make sure you're getting the most like value out of it. It's taking up the most like space, but you want to get it before it's bloomed out to the tip. Like that's too long. And then if the bottom ones are starting to drop off, then, you've waited too long. So sometimes, you just have to kind of break those bottom ones off and then use those ones that are a little bit more bloomed out in bouquets or something. But ideally for a florist, about 50 to 75% open.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Now we're going to move on to another crop you can start from seed, and that is Snapdragons. So why are Snapdragons an important Mother's Day crop for your farm?
I think for the same reason stock is. They smell nice. They add more fluff like to the arrangements. You can start them from seed, and also the Snapdragons we plant even more dense than we plant the stock. And so as far as the profit per square foot of the heated space that it takes to grow them, in our numbers that we've run, they're actually the highest profit per square foot plant that we grow.
Oh, wow. So is the price per stem that you're able to sell them for similar to stock?
Yeah, they're about in line. Stock's like for florists, it's about $1 more than what we charge for the Snapdragons. And we are growing them also as a one and done crop. So with the idea being, we want this one, we're not pinching them. We want one nice thick stem, and that's what we're going to cut them tall enough to fit in like a 6-gallon bucket and sell that to florists. And then any of the ones that are the stems, if the stems are smaller than your pinky or they're too bloomed out, then those are the ones that get cut and used like in bouquets. So we do have like kind of 2 grades of things happening with some of these flowers in the greenhouse.
So what colors and varieties do you grow specifically for Mother's Day? And you can also talk about the groups that might be blooming at that time.
Yeah, so what's in the picture that you see, the like open-faced butterfly varieties, those are actually 1-2s. So for us, they're typically done by Mother's Day. So it's more the standard snaps that we can have for Mother's Day. Just because it does get a little bit warmer. So those are the group 3-4s. So if you don't know about snaps, there's ones that can handle specific temperature ranges and day length. So it's about both of those things. But if you look in the back of Ball's catalog, they have a chart of like, based on the date that you're sowing your seeds, which group number you should do. So the 3-4s are the ones that you grow in the summer, but there's still greenhouse forcing 3-4s. So we like Potomac and Opus are both good late season ones with the 3-4s happening. If you are cooler than us, you could probably still do Chantilly's later in the season. Or like I know people in the Pacific Northwest, they can grow the Chantilly's for a lot longer than us just because they stay like mild. But I think it just is that kind of intense spike we have in the heat. Sometimes it happens in May that causes them to be really skinny if you're growing the 1-2s in the wrong time of season.
So what colors have you found to be the most popular with your customers for Mother's Day Snapdragons?
Well, I know it sounds like I'm saying the same thing over and over again, but like the salmon, salmon PG colors, the like lavender is a good one to have for Mother's Day. We do also like royal, which is kind of this like dark purpley color, just to give you something different in there. And again, not a lot of red for us happening in the spring. So we save the red snaps we plant more for the ones that we do in the fall, kind of doing Thanksgiving into Christmas snaps. That's when the red ones are good for us.
All right. And when do you typically start planting Snapdragons, and how does your succession planting look for that? And are they going in structures? Are they going in the field?
So for Mother's Day, they're in a heated space. They're kind of the same as the stock, where it's like we have them planted in the unheated space, but those don't typically bloom till right after Mother's Day. We only grow snaps in the greenhouse, so we do not do them outside in the summer, just because the quality is totally different, and I don't like the skinny stems that happen in the summer.
Yeah.
So we starting them around the end of the year, and then go through about week 9 or so is sort of our last planting. And then we start again in the fall. So they have pretty similar timing to what the stalk does. And as long as you're planting the right groups, you can also get those fall snaps. If you're looking for an open face butterfly one, that are a 3-4, Madam Butterfly is a good one, and you can buy them by the color too. You used to only be able to buy a mix. So those are the butterfly ones that we tend to use in the fall.
Great. And what's your typical bloom time frame on Snapdragons in spring into summer?
So we usually have them, for us, April through June. So they're more heat tolerant than the stalk is. And so we can typically have them through the end of June. And that's nice because it sort of helps us get through like wedding season and sort of into field production time.
And have you ever had any issues hitting Mother's Day with your Snapdragons?
I think like it's probably the same answer as the stock, where it just is like sometimes maybe you didn't get them planted on time, you didn't get them seeded on time, or you planted the wrong series, or there just was like kind of extreme weather one way or the other, of it being really cold or being really warm. But most of the time they're on time. What's a bummer sometimes is when you're like, they're all in bud and it's Mother's Day. It's like the week after Mother's Day when they blow up. But
so frustrating.
Yeah, that's just part of farming. Sometimes it happens,
It is. All right. So you kind of already mentioned this, but you grow your Snapdragons as one and done. You don't pinch or anything. And how tightly do you space these?
So these we put 3 per hole. So they're actually 36 plants per foot.
Oh, wow. So 3 plants in every 6-inch by 6-inch square.
Yeah. So that's another reason why we don't like pinch or anything. Basically, we're creating that environment of them growing one long straight stem, and then that's all we're gonna get out of them.
Did you always start off planting that tightly, or did you experiment pushing them closer and closer and eventually realize that it worked?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we started doing enterprise budgets, it was kind of like, okay, well, we need to like fit more plants per foot if we're going to like take the space away from ranunculus. And then we started with 2 plants per hole, like we did the stalk, but the stalk is a little bit more disease prone, and the snaps don't have as bushy of foliage, so that's why they can handle like being a little bit tighter. So yeah, it just has been through trial and error, figuring out, if you think about something like sweet peas, they're beautiful and you can have them for Mother's Day, but you only plant 2 rows per bed and they take a lot of space and time trellising them and all of that. So it was like once we really started like crunching numbers, I think was when we like understood kind of what that meant. And that's also why some crops like have been cut, like some space has been taken away from Dusty Miller, because it's like, yeah, it's nice to have some foliage, but we're not going to put that much focus on it when we know we could have a bed of snaps that looks like this, as opposed to having Dusty Miller like for Mother's Day. So
and we're actually going to include a link in the show notes where you'll be able to download Steve and Gretel's greenhouse transplant guide for how they space a bunch of different crops, by the way. So check that out if you're interested.
Yeah.
And can you just describe the proper harvest stage for Snapdragons?
So they're similar to stock in that we want them to be 50 to 75% open. And so it's again about that like ratio of open ones to closed ones.
Perfect. All right, now we're going to move on to a bulb crop, and that is tulips. So why are tulips an important Mother's Day crop for your farm?
So for us, tulips are important because it's the one thing we can grow outside and have for Mother's Day. We can plant in the fall. We plant about 75,000 tulips, and we can store them harvested with the bulb on dry in the cooler to get them to hold for Mother's Day. And most of the time we're still picking for Mother's Day too, the late varieties in the field. But it also, we do some pre-chilled tulips in the heated greenhouse space as well. So for us, tulips in the spring are something we can have for Easter, and it's something that starts kind of beginning of March for us. Yes. Yeah, so they definitely help bulk up bouquets and kind of like be the support to the like ranunculus and anemones when they start happening.
Yeah. So what colors and varieties do you like to grow for Mother's Day?
So for Mother's Day, the ones for us in our zone that are the most helpful are the late varieties. So we're typically harvesting the late varieties still, and the mid varieties are the ones that are in storage. So these ones on the left in this photo are Salmon Impression. They're like a single variety. They're Darwin. They're an early one. So like those we've typically worked through before like Mother's Day happens, unless it's a really cold spring. If it's cold, then we still have some of these in the cooler for Mother's Day. But the mid and late ones are typically what like have the most value for us during Mother's Day time.
All right. And when do you start planting tulips? And do you do any successions, and which structures versus field are they going in?
So all of the outdoor tulips are planted in October, like beginning of October. And then for us, they typically start blooming in April and then go into May, kind of depending on how warm it is. But with the pre-chilled ones, we start planting in December. We do a few different successions. And so those start blooming in March and take us into outdoor tulip time. So those are what we can have like for Easter. Yeah.
Perfect. And so overall, how long do you typically have tulips blooming?
From about March through Mother's Day. So Mother's Day, we will sell through every tulip that we've got on the farm, like everything that we can pick. So everything that's in storage and everything that's like currently being picked. So
great. So it's coming from the field and from the cooler. Everything you have kind of goes out on Mother's Day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's what makes it so that we can make a volume of bouquets for Mother's Day. Without tulips, like there's no way that we'd be able to produce the number of bouquets that we do.
So it sounds like you don't have any issues hitting Mother's Day with your tulips.
Yep, they're always there, whether it's the mid ones or the late ones. That's why we try and just change, have a variety of types that we have in the field.
And what is the proper harvest stage for a tulip? And can you talk about, do you pull the entire bulb up when you harvest? How do you do that?
Yeah, so we do pull the whole bulb up, and that is so that they can be stored. So they are either pulled up with the whole bulb and tight enough to go into storage. That's one grade. Or the second grade is the bulb came off when you tried to pick it, or it's more open than, it's open, and then those ones need to go in water and be used right away. So those are the first ones to be cycled through as far as bunches and bouquets being made and stuff. So we do pick them a little bit green. If you're seeing these photos, then you can kind of see the difference where the ones on the left-hand side are more open, and those are like for retail bunches. And that's something that is going to be sold the next day or that day in the farm stand. And then the ones on the right have our employee Carmen in front of them. And those are all ones that are being put into storage. So you can see them in the crates. Those are being like held in the cooler. So the ones going into storage are a little bit more green. We still let them color up a little bit because you want them to still have enough energy to like open up and have nice color. But we want that to be happening in the cooler or in the vase and not necessarily in the field. So you want to make sure you're getting them before they're too open in the field. Otherwise, they're not going to last as long.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here, Gretel. We really appreciate all this information that you shared with us. And as I mentioned before, Steve and Gretel have a great online class with the Gardener's Workshop called Growing Cut Flower Crops in Hoop and Greenhouses. It opens for enrollment in the fall, but you can get on their email list now so you can get notified when it does open. So how else can people connect with you, Gretel?
On Instagram, we're Sunny Meadows Flower Farm. And yeah, we post a lot of videos on there of like behind the scenes stuff. So if you're looking for like informational things, it's not just like armloads of pretty flowers. We're showing the like nitty gritty behind it and kind of the hard work that it takes. So, and then if you're interested in buying flowers, flowers. We do ship to florists nationwide. So that's something else. We found a lot of growers that are just starting or do events and don't have the volume that they need, or don't do the season extension that we do, have become some of our best customers. So, the things that you're seeing on Instagram or whatever, we can ship to you. So that's another way to sort of be in touch with kind of like what we have blooming and what we have going on sort of as your business grows. So
yes. And Steve and Gretel are a wealth of information, as you can tell by what she's shared with us today. And I do have 3 Mother's Day themed questions for you too, Gretel. Okay. So, and this is in anticipation of your baby boy's arrival. So what are you the most nervous about becoming a mom to a human baby? I know that you guys have various animal babies, but what are you the most nervous about?
I think just feeling like I know what I'm doing. So I never, we didn't like plan on having kids. The business has always been our child. So I think it will be an interesting transition of just integrating the kid into farm life and sort of how that's going to change my role on the farm. I'm a workaholic. So like that's how we've gotten to this point of just like working really hard. So I think just having more boundaries of like work-life balance will be interesting to see how that all shakes out. So
yes. Well, the fact that you and Steve built this amazing business together and you figured out all these complicated successions on the farm and learned how to manage all the different pests and diseases, I think you're going to be fine.
Yeah, we've spent the last month just trying to I created basically a manual for my job, like standard operating procedures, like how do I make the decisions that I make? What resources do I use? What Excel sheets have I created? Like, how do I gather all this information? So it's been a really interesting process for me to actually think about, like, how do I make those decisions? So that information can be like passed on to somebody else. But I think our team is going to do great. They know what they're doing out there, and they know, how to pick flowers and put them together and sell flowers. So I think it'll take a collective, but they're going to be amazing. So.
And what are you looking forward to the most?
I think just how it will change the farm, just having the kid around and being able to share everything that we've built with somebody. I feel like it gives the farm more purpose, whether he decides he wants to farm or not. Still is.
Have you picked out a name yet? And if you're not sharing, that's okay.
We've got some top contenders, but we have not settled on anything yet. So
maybe once you see him, it will become clear to you.
Yeah.
So my last question is, can you describe your perfect Mother's Day bouquet?
Well, like I said, I like dark flowers, which is maybe different from other people, but I would say, something dark and moody. So I like maybe burgundy purple and like ruby or something like that. Maybe with just a few pops of something brighter, but that would be, we talk about that because, when we got married, was the very beginning of the farm. And so me and one of the other girls was one of my designers, were always like, when I have a funeral, here's the flowers that I want. That's your chance to like redo it, So it's funny thinking about, what I would want as a Mother's Day bouquet when all these years it's been about what other people want. So
Well, happy early Mother's Day to you, Gretel, and happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there and all the moms of pets as well. So thank you so much for joining us, everyone. If you enjoyed this, please make sure to subscribe and also give us a rating and review in a podcast app or a like or comment over on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you again, Gretel. And we're wishing you a very easy, fast delivery and a beautiful, healthy baby boy.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And maybe I'll throw a picture up on the screen after he's born, because this will be airing when he has arrived.
Okay. Yeah, we can send you one for sure.
All right. Thank you. Until next time, everybody. Bye.
Bye.